There are many cities around the world that have inspired great works of art and literature. For hundreds of years, artists have come to Paris to live and work. Writers like George Orwell, F. Scott Fitzgerald, Ernest Hemingway, and many others travelled from across Europe and around the world to experience life in the city. The awe-inspiring city of Prague inspired the work of Franz Kafka. And since the early 20th century, New York has been home to many well-known writers and artists. London has changed a lot since Charles Dickens wrote about the city in the early 19th century. But the city still attracts writers from the UK and around the world. Of course, it isn't just great cities that inspire writers. Every year, people travel to the Lake District in the north of England to visit a tiny farmhouse in the middle of beautiful English countryside. Hilltop Farm was the home of Beatrix Potter. The hard-working Potter wrote and illustrated The Tale of Peter Rabbit and many other well-loved stories for children. Since she wrote Peter Rabbit in 1902, more than 40 million copies have been sold, and the story has been translated into more than 35 languages. Hilltop has been open to the paying public for over 60 years, and it's still as popular as ever. In 2012, there were over 100,000 visitors. Less than 100 miles from Hilltop, there's another house with a far more dramatic and remarkable literary history. This is the town of Haworth in Yorkshire, in the north of England. And at the top of the steep cobbled high street is the Bronte parsonage. This house was the home of Charlotte Bronte, the author of Jane Eyre, Emily Bronte, the author of Wuthering Heights, and Anne Bronte, the author of The Tenant of Wildfell Hall. The sisters moved here with their father, Patrick, and their brother, Branwell, and it was while they were living here that they wrote the much-loved novels that have sold millions of copies and have been adapted into hundreds of stage plays, films, and television programmes. Haworth is surrounded by Pennine Yorkshire moorland, and this dramatic location was the inspiration for many of the Brontes' novels. Life was extremely hard here in the mid-1800s. The Brontes' mother died soon after arriving at Haworth, and two sisters, Maria and Elizabeth, died when they were just 10 and 11. At the parsonage, Charlotte, Emily, and Anne filled their evenings with writing, usually sitting together at the table in the small dining room. Unlike most male authors, at first the sisters didn't publish their books under their real names. Instead, they used to write as Currer, Ellis, and Acton Bell. They had hoped that this would allow them to be treated like writers rather than women writers. Their books were instant hits, and everyone wanted to know the true identity of the authors. So, Charlotte and Anne travelled to London by train to tell their publishers their real names. But tragedy was never far away. In 1848, Branwell died, followed 3 months later by Emily, and then Anne 5 months after that. Shortly after she married, Charlotte died in 1855. But by the time she died, Charlotte had become a famous writer, There has been a small Bronte museum in Haworth since 1895, but it wasn't until 1928 that the parsonage opened to the public. Today, inside, visitors can see many of the sisters' possessions, including Charlotte's wedding dress, and many of the sisters' heartwarming handwritten letters and manuscripts. Experts still come to the parsonage from around the world to research the sisters and their work. For many visitors, it is exploring the dramatic Yorkshire countryside surrounding the parsonage that really helps them to understand the powerful novels of the remarkable Bronte sisters.